The wind on the 16th floor of the pinnacle building felt less like air and more like a malicious, invisible hand trying to shove me into the night. It was 3 a.m., and the city lights below were a beautiful, glittering mockery of all the life I was about to throw away. My name is ELIAS THORNE, 26 years old. And in about 30 seconds I was going to be dead. I stood on the narrow, icy ledge outside my failed startup's former office, staring down at the indifferent asphalt. The note was taped to the inside of the window, short, apologetic, and utterly meaningless. I'd lost everything: the company, my savings, and most importantly, the will to keep fighting a world that seemed designed to crush people like me. I took a deep, shuddering breath, tasting the cold city smog. This was it. The final, cowardly surrender. I leaned forward, letting my weight shift, when a voice, softer than the wind but sharper than broken glass, cut through the noise. "Don't. You'll make a mess." I froze. The voice was pure English, but with an accent I couldn't place. It was precise, almost musical, yet carried a cold, otherworldly resonance, like distant church bells ringing underwater. I didn't turn around. "Who is that? Go away. This doesn't concern you." "It concerns me very much, ELIAS THORNE," the voice replied, closer now. "Cleaning up human fragments is a terrible inconvenience, and this particular building is under my jurisdiction." I finally managed to pivot carefully, my heart now hammering not with fear of death, but with a sudden, bewildering adrenaline rush. She was standing right there, not a foot away. She hadn't opened the window, she was simply there, having appeared in the tiny, wind-swept space as if she were as much a part of the night as the darkness itself. She was stunning. Her skin was a shade of pale silver that seemed to absorb and diffuse the moonlight, giving her an ethereal glow. Her hair was a cascade of deep indigo, pulled back from a face with features so perfect they seemed sculpted from another planet. But it was her eyes that held me, large, almond-shaped, and a vivid, shocking amethyst purple. She wore a simple, sleeveless, high-collared garment made of a material that shimmered like liquid starlight. She looked at me the way a scientist looks at a fascinating but ultimately doomed specimen. "You know my name?" I whispered, my voice cracked and dry. "Of course. I know the chemical composition of your despair, the exact moment of your decision, and the trajectory your body will take when you fall. I know that beneath the melodrama, you're just a collapsing star of potential." She took a slow, deliberate step toward me. I stumbled back, my heel scraping the very edge of the abyss. "Get back. What are you? Security guard?" "I don't care who you are, I'm doing this." A faint, amused smile touched her lips, revealing teeth that were unnervingly straight and white. "A security guard? No. My name is Lysandra, and I am your salvation if you choose it. Or perhaps your final problem, if you insist on your pathetic plan." "Salvation? You're joking." "I'm finished, Lysandra. Just let me fall." Her purple eyes narrowed, and the air temperature seemed to drop instantly. "Falling is such a waste. You, ELIAS, are a near-perfect biological match. Your blood type, your low microbial count, your resilient nervous system, it's all quite rare on this backwater planet. And I require a new vessel." I stared at her, utterly confused. "Vessel? What the hell are you talking about? Are you some kind of crazy person?" Lysandra tilted her head, her expression shifting from cold amusement to a clinical impatience. "I'm not a person, ELIAS. And I have very little time for your human dramatics. I am Kaelen, from a lineage that has observed your species since you were first learning to use fire. And yes, you could call me a vampire in your quaint terminology. But the truth is far grander and far more demanding." Before I could process the word vampire, or the absurdity of her confession, her expression hardened. She raised her hand toward my face. "Right now, ELIAS, your heart rate is erratic, your blood pressure is dangerously low, and the chill from this building is seeping into your bone marrow. You are approximately 60 seconds from passing out, at which point the wind will do my work for me. You are about to die." Then her movements became impossibly fast. Faster than anything I could track. I didn't see her move, but suddenly her face was inches from mine, and a sharp, breathtaking pain erupted in my neck. It wasn't the slow, sensual bite from the cheap horror movies, it was an invasive, consuming pressure. I cried out, but the sound was swallowed by the wind. I felt the life force draining out of me, a terrifying emptiness spreading through my limbs. I was dying, truly dying this time, and this impossibly beautiful creature was the instrument of my end. But just as the darkness started to claim my vision, just as my knees buckled and I felt myself tipping over the edge, the pain vanished. Instead, a searing, electric warmth flooded my veins. It was thick, metallic, and unbelievably potent. It felt like liquid lightning, pushing back the cold, pushing back the darkness, and most shockingly pushing back the death that had already begun its claim. Lysandra pulled back, her silver skin glistening. A single dark droplet of her blood, vibrant blue-purple in the city lights, rested on her perfect chin. She looked at me, her eyes burning with an intense, triumphant energy. "There," she said, her voice now deep with exhaustion. "It is done. You are ELIAS THORNE, the vessel. My blood is in your system. It has repaired the damage, rewritten your mortal clock, and bound you to me." I gasped, my breath now steady, my mind sharp, the fatigue completely gone. I felt too alive. Every sound, every light, every particle of dust was magnified. I looked at the vast, terrifying drop below and felt no fear. Only a raw, incomprehensible surge of energy. What have you done to me?" I stammered, touching the two tiny, bleeding pinpricks on my neck. Lysandra smiled, not with amusement this time, but with a terrifying sense of ownership. "I was about to let you die," she reiterated, a faint weariness in her purple eyes. "Then an alien vampire gave me her blood and made me immortal. Now you belong to the Kaelen. And your new life, ELIAS, starts right now." She extended a pale hand, not offering help, but commanding obedience. "Welcome to the long night, vessel. Now let's go inside. We have rules to discuss." The 16th floor office, the very same place where ELIAS Thorne's mortal life had died, was no longer just an empty space. It was a sterile, cold chamber, illuminated by the harsh, fluorescent glow of a large alien device Lysandra had apparently materialized from thin air. My head was spinning, not from the heights or the despair, but from the raw, buzzing energy inside me. I was alive, yes, but not human alive. I looked at Lysandra. Under the office lights, her features were even more striking, aligning perfectly with the intimidating figure from the thumbnail. Her skin held a definite, translucent blue tint, her long, flowing hair was the color of freshly fallen snow, silver white, and those unforgettable eyes were now a searing, hypnotic red. The change from amethyst purple to red seemed to reflect a shift in her power, or perhaps just the effect of the indoor light. "Sit," she commanded, gesturing to a sleek, metallic chair that looked far too advanced for a defunct startup office. I found myself obeying instantly. Not out of respect, but because the strange, potent substance in my veins, her blood, seemed to demand compliance. "What did you mean, vessel?" I demanded, my voice stronger than it had been in months. The fear was replaced by a furious, almost manic curiosity. "And why me? Why save a guy who was literally seconds from jumping?" Lysandra walked towards the windows, the liquid starlight material of her dress catching the city lights. "You misunderstand the nature of the Kaelen," she began, her tone a lecture given to a particularly slow student. "We do not simply exist, we consume and we sustain. Your human concept of vampire, a creature that drains blood for survival, is primitive. We Kaelen require a host, a vessel, to stabilize our non-terrestrial physiology while we operate on this planet. Your despair was merely an opportunity, ELIAS. Your perfect biology was the reason." "Stabilize? My true form," she explained, turning back, a hint of something ancient and terrifying in her red eyes, "is inconvenient for continuous interaction with your lower dimensional reality. Your body, now infused with my blood, acts as an anchor. It's a symbiotic relationship. I give you immortality, a perfect, self-healing existence, and you give me stability." I laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "Immortality? What good is eternity when I'm just your puppet? And you said your blood rewrote my mortal clock." "Indeed. From this moment on you will not age. Wounds will close instantly. Diseases will be irrelevant. You are, effectively, invulnerable. And yes, you are bound to me," she confirmed without an ounce of remorse. "My blood carries a neural signature. When I require assistance or simply demand your presence, you will feel the pull. You will obey. Think of it as the ultimate employment contract." She then activated the device. A holographic display flickered to life, showing complex schematics that were indecipherable to me, but they looked like weapons, advanced vehicles, and city layouts. "Your new life, ELIAS, is not about sipping cocktails for 1,000 years. It's about work. The Kaelen are not tourists. We are here to manage and monitor certain cosmic interferences on this sector of the galaxy. That requires physical intervention, often violent." She pointed to the tactical, dark armored look of the figure in the thumbnail I now visualized in my head. "You will be my field agent. The armor, the weapons, it will all be provided. Your training starts tonight. You may be immortal, but a high-velocity plasma round can still cause enough disruption to require several hours of inconvenient regeneration. You will learn to fight, to endure, and to hunt. A cold dread settled in my stomach, heavier than my previous despair. Hunt? Oh, aliens? Other vampires? Both and worse. The universe is a vast, messy place, Elias. And now you are officially part of the mess. Lysandra walked towards me again. She reached out and placed a single chillingly cold hand on my cheek. There are 3 fundamental rules you must never break, she whispered, her red eyes burning into mine. Break these and I will not simply disrupt your regeneration. I will revoke the gift entirely, leaving you to feel every agonizing second of the return to your frail, collapsing mortality. She leaned in, and the scent of ozone and something ancient, like cold, polished stone, filled my senses. Rule 1. Never reveal the nature of your existence or my identity to any mortal. You are a secret weapon, not a celebrity. Rule 2. Never question my direct commands. They are based on centuries of tactical data that your fragile human brain cannot process. And Rule 3, her voice dropped to a deep, dangerous purr, you are mine. You will never attempt to leave my service, betray my interests, or form any emotional or romantic attachment that could compromise your loyalty to me. Your eternal life belongs only to the Kaelen. She removed her hand. The coldness remained. Understand, vessel? Immortality is not freedom. It is the highest form of servitude. I stared back at her, the fight in me igniting. I was a slave, yes, but I was also not dead. That was a significant victory. I understand, I said, the words tasting like ash, but my new invigorated heart was pounding with a desire to survive this new terror. I'm your vessel. Where do we start? Lysandra's smile was predatory. Good. We start with your attire. That suit is hopelessly flammable. Follow me. We're going to need a more secure location for your training. She turned and vanished into the holographic light, leaving the metallic chair and the advanced device as the only proof that my suicide attempt had been interrupted by an alien vampire. I stood up, feeling the immense, terrifying power thrumming beneath my skin, and walked towards the light. The long night had just begun. The holographic light that Lysandra had vanished into wasn't a screen, it was a portal. As I stepped through, the world lurched and the cold, mundane office dissolved into an environment of impossible grandeur. The air immediately grew warm, humid, and thick with the scent of petrichor and ancient metals. I was standing in a vast, vaulted chamber that perfectly mirrored the aesthetic of the thumbnail, Gothic, towering architecture with immense, arched windows of stained glass. But instead of depicting earthly saints, the windows glowed with vibrant, swirling images of nebulas, colliding galaxies, and creatures that defied physics. Rays of otherworldly sunlight, or some deep space equivalent, streamed through, illuminating motes of dust in the air. This wasn't a lair, it was a sanctuary. A hidden pocket of hyper-advanced alien architecture nestled somewhere deep within the core of the city, or perhaps an entirely different dimension folded into our own. Welcome to the Kaelen outpost, Elias. Lysandra's voice echoed from a distance. She was standing beneath a massive, pulsating structure made of crystalline metal that looked like a throne and a control panel combined. Her blue-tinted skin and silver-white hair seemed perfectly at home in this majestic, cold environment. I looked down at myself. The cheap, stained suit I had been wearing moments ago was gone, replaced by a smooth, flexible dark bodysuit. It felt like a second skin, lightweight yet incredibly durable, and humming with a faint, contained energy. I realized this was the beginning of the tactical gear hinted at in the visual. This is impossible, I whispered, running a hand over the cold, intricately carved stone of a nearby pillar. Humanity clings to impossible, because you limit your senses to 5 meager inputs, Lysandra scoffed, her red eyes gleaming with disdain. This outpost uses quantum entanglement to exist everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. It is shielded from your most potent detection methods. It is the heart of the Kaelen operation on this planet. She motioned to the metallic, throne-like structure. This is the nexus. It is the conduit through which I channel the necessary energies for stabilization and defense. And this is where your true purpose begins. She extended her hand toward a glowing, pillar-like device. As she did, 2 thin rings of energy, one brilliant, searing red, and the other a cool, electric blue, flared to life around her. These were the very rings depicted in the thumbnail, and seeing them in person was breathtaking. These energies are the core of Kaelen existence, Lysandra explained, her voice now charged with power. The blue energy is the stabilizing, structural force. It maintains the reality of the outpost, the integrity of your immortal body, and allows for instantaneous transit. It is the life giver. She then focused on the red energy which pulsed with menacing aggression. The red energy is the kinetic, disruptive force. It is what we use to neutralize threats. In your human folklore, this would be the magic, or the curse. When a Kaelen drains, this is the energy that rewrites biology. You have both in your veins now, Elias, but you are not Kaelen enough to control them consciously. So, I'm a battery? I asked, the resentment rising. You are a finely tuned conductor, she corrected. My blood, the essence of the blue and red, flows through you. When I need to channel excess red energy for a large-scale defensive measure, you will absorb the backlash. When I need a sudden burst of blue energy to open a new transit portal, it will draw from your system. That is your sacrifice and your power source. She paused, then moved with her signature unnatural speed to stand directly in front of me. The training begins now, Elias. The threats we hunt are known as the Dravos. They are interdimensional parasites that feed on the concept of organized life. They are what caused the collapse of your pathetic startup, by the way, subtle suggestion, creeping paranoia, the implosion of trust. They are far too prevalent in your major cities. My eyes widened. The Dravos? They were real? I thought the collapse was just bad luck and bad decisions. Lysandra sneered. Bad luck is a Dravos' favorite camouflage. Your first mission is to learn how to see them. Your new sight, granted by my blood, allows you to perceive their energy signature. She stepped back and opened a concealed wall panel. Inside were not swords or guns but sleek, black wrist-mounted devices. This is a Kaelen emitter. It focuses the latent red energy in your system into a precise beam. A direct hit will not kill a Dravos, but it will momentarily disrupt its ethereal form, making it corporeal enough for a physical strike. She picked one up and tossed it to me. It felt cool and heavy in my hand. The weight felt familiar, like a part of my own body. You have 1 hour to familiarize yourself with the emitter. Then we travel to the nearest nest. Tonight, ELIAS THORNE, you take your first immortal step into the long dark duty you have inherited. The realization hit me. My new life was not a gift of leisure, but a terrifying initiation into an endless, hidden war. I was not just a vampire's slave. I was a soldier in an alien conflict, bound by rules of obedience and fueled by the blood that should have killed me. I looked at the beautiful, intimidating Lysandra, whose eyes were twin crimson stars in the eternal night. There was no going back. Show me how to shoot this thing, Lysandra, I said, the words ringing with a sudden, fierce resolve. The man who wanted to die was gone. The vessel wanted to live and fight. Lysandra led me away from the nexus and through a vast, curving corridor of the outpost. The architecture shifted from Gothic cathedral to sleek, intimidating military installation. We arrived at a massive, circular chamber where the air thrummed with contained energy, the training simulation bay. The first lesson, Elias, is pain, Lysandra stated, her voice devoid of emotion. Your human body was designed to avoid pain. It's a warning system. My blood, however, turns pain into a feedback loop. It tells you how quickly you're repairing, not how badly you're damaged. I watched as the room's walls dissolved into a hazy, urban landscape simulation. A dark alleyway dripping with rain. You have $text, $10 seconds to familiarize yourself with the Kaelen emitter, she commanded. Then the drones activate. Wrist-mounted device. It felt unnervingly natural. I raised my arm, aimed at a faded graffiti symbol on the simulated wall, and focused. Remembering Lysandra's words, I channeled the raw, buzzing power of her blood, the red energy, into the emitter. FC. A sharp, crimson beam erupted from the device, hitting the wall with a crackle. It wasn't powerful enough to disintegrate the wall, but it left a smoking, circular scorch mark. Too slow. Too weak, Lysandra critiqued. You are hesitant. Stop thinking like a victim. Before I could reply, the simulation began. 3 dark, insectoid drones materialized from the shadows, immediately locking onto me. They weren't Dravos but target practice. I instinctively raised my arm and fired, but my aim was off. The beam missed the first drone and the second drone responded instantly, firing a pulse of compressed, neon green energy. The blast hit my chest. The pain was instantaneous and absolute, 1,000 times worse than any physical trauma I'd ever experienced. It felt like my very atoms were being ripped apart. I screamed, stumbling backward, the emitter clattering on the metallic floor. Get up, vessel. It's a low-grade shock pulse. Lysandra's voice was sharp, a whip crack of command, but I was already healing. The raw wound on my chest, visible through the tear in the suit, was closing with impossible speed. The intense, burning pain was rapidly replaced by a hyperactive tingling, the sensation of cells rebuilding faster than the damage could register. In seconds the pain was gone, and the suit was already stitching itself back together. I scrambled up, fueled by a mixture of shock and rage. What was that? That, Lysandra said, gesturing to the still active drone, is what happens when you hesitate. The goal is not to endure, the goal is to nullify the threat. Focus the red energy, Elias. Not just from your heart but from the source, my blood in your veins. She stepped into the simulation but not to help. She was demonstrating. She didn't use an emitter. Instead, she simply extended her hand. A thick, vibrant red energy shield flared around her. When the drone fired again, the green pulse harmlessly dissipated on the crimson barrier. Then she condensed the shield into a bright, focused beam that wasn't a projectile, but a sustained stream of heat, liquefying the drone in an instant. Your body can survive this pain 1,000 times, Elias, she said, looking directly at me, her red eyes burning. But that doesn't mean you should feel it 1,000 times. Use the power, or the power will constantly be reminding you of your failure. The final drone charged. This time I didn't think. I remembered the sensation of the healing, that furious, electrical current, and slammed all my focus into the emitter. Crackle. The red energy beam was twice as wide and intensely bright. It struck the drone dead center, causing the machine to short-circuit and explode into harmless sparks. A small flicker of approval crossed Lysandra's face. Better. Now regeneration check. Before I could relax, she moved again, impossibly fast. She didn't use energy, she used brute Kaelen force. Her hand shot out and she snapped my right forearm with a sickening crunch. I cried out again, the pain overwhelming, but this time I listened to the feedback. The bone was knitting itself back together instantly, the agonizing pressure lasting less than half a second before it subsided into that familiar, invigorating thrumming. My arm was whole. The greatest threat to a vessel is dismemberment or systemic trauma. The blood will fix the fracture in 0.4 seconds, but the pain is the time lag, she said clinically. The faster you react, the less you suffer. Your life and my mission depends on you reducing that lag to 0. She walked toward the nexus, the powerful hum of the outposts surrounding us. Training complete for the moment. Your nervous system needs to integrate the pain/regeneration cycle. We have a target, Elias. A confirmed Dravos nest in the lower levels of the city. A place where desperation and consumption are ripe. It is time for your debut. She reached the nexus. The device pulsed with a blinding mix of red and blue energy, the same energy that surrounded her in the thumbnail. She placed one hand on a glowing panel and turned to me, her expression grim. Hold on to me, Elias. We are initiating rapid dimensional transit. Do not fight the feeling. It will make you violently ill. I walked toward her, my arms still tingling from the broken bone, my mind reeling from the brutal lesson. I had gone from wanting to die to being forced to live a life of eternal, agonizing combat. I placed my hand on her shoulder. The skin was impossibly cold, like marble. Lysandra closed her eyes, and the air around us shimmered. The sanctuary vanished in a torrent of blinding, swirling light. The dimensional transit was a nightmare. It felt like being simultaneously compressed into a diamond and stretched into thin air. I fought the urge to vomit, clenching my jaw until my teeth ached. The moment the swirling lights subsided, I found myself gasping for air, bracing myself against Lysandra, whose cold marble skin was the only solid thing in a world that had just been violently disassembled and reassembled. We were in a bustling, cavernous space. The air was loud with the cacophony of human life, screeching train brakes, announcements crackling over a PA system, and the hurried footsteps of thousands of people. We had materialized in the middle of a major city transit hub, a place teeming with commuters, tourists, and the perpetually stressed. Lysandra instantly released me and surveyed the crowd, her red eyes cool and detached. A Grand Central Station clone. Perfect. The concentration of emotional output here is a feast for them. They thrive on the low-grade, everyday misery of the masses. I was still reeling, my head light, but the Kaelen blood quickly stabilized my inner equilibrium. I took a steadying breath and looked around. It was a normal, if chaotic, underground station. I don't see anything, I muttered, gripping the Kaelen emitter on my wrist. It just looks like Tuesday. That is because you are looking with human eyes, Elias, Lysandra replied, her voice low. Now look with my blood. Open your senses. Do not look at the people, look through them. Focus on the disruption, the subtle shift in the ambient energy. I closed my eyes and focused on the fierce, tingling energy within me, the fusion of her blue and red Kaelen blood. I pushed past the sensory overload of the crowd and tried to perceive the world not as light and sound, but as frequency and flow. When I opened my eyes, the world had fundamentally changed. The people were still there, but now I could see a faint, translucent, sickly yellow aura clinging to them. This aura was thicker and darker around the ones who looked tired, angry, or desperately unhappy. And then I saw the Dravos. They were horrifying. Not physical, but like shimmering heat-haze distortions in the air. They were vaguely spider-like, with long thin limbs that faded in and out of visibility, moving with an erratic, jittery speed. They weren't walking through the crowd. They were gliding, inserting their shadowy claws into the yellow auras of unsuspecting commuters. As a Dravos plunged its claw into a man rushing by, the man flinched, his face twisting in sudden, unprovoked irritation, and the Dravos grew momentarily brighter. They weren't feeding on blood, they were feeding on emotional collapse. "There," I whispered, the realization sending a chill down my spine. They're everywhere. Like air pollution." Lysandra nodded, a flicker of professional satisfaction in her eyes. "Good. Your vision is online. Now observe the largest concentration of disturbance, the nest. They have been actively corrupting a central figure to orchestrate a major incident here. Find the source." I scanned the main concourse, tracing the flow of the shimmering Dravos. They were all converging on one spot, a deserted newsstand near the exit. Standing behind the counter was a man in his 50s, nervously wiping down the glass. He looked normal, but around him the air was thick with a churning blackish-red haze of concentrated psychic energy. Several large Dravos were attached to him like grotesque barnacles. "The man at the newsstand," I pointed. "He's the nucleus. The haze around him is dense." "Correct. That man Jeffrey is their anchor. They have pushed him past his breaking point and are preparing him to detonate a simple device he believes will make his problems stop. When the explosion hits, the resultant panic and terror will feed the entire hive for a month." My blood ran cold. "We have to warn someone. Call the police." Lysandra fixed me with a devastating, cold stare. "Remember Rule 1, Elias? We do not interact with the mortals' flawed systems. Their intervention would cause mass panic, which is precisely what the Dravos want. We are the surgical strike. You are the surgical strike." She pulled her hood up slightly, her silver-white hair and blue-tinted skin hidden in the shadows of the crowd. "The Dravos on Jeffrey must be momentarily solidified by the red energy emitter before you can strike. They are semi-ethereal, a punch will pass through them. Your red energy beam is the key. Fire, close the distance and neutralize the Dravos before they can fully realize they are under attack." I felt the adrenaline surge, a pure, clean rush of focus that was entirely new. This was no longer about my failed life. It was about saving hundreds of unknown people from a terror they couldn't even see. "What about Jeffrey?" I asked. "Jeffrey is a victim. Once the Dravos are severed, he will collapse, exhausted. He will be harmless. Now go, Elias. Vessel, commence elimination." I took a deep breath, the sounds of the station fading as my Kaelen senses zeroed in on the black-red distortion around Jeffrey. I moved, not running but flowing, my immortal body reacting with an efficiency I never knew I possessed. The Dravos hunt had begun. The sound of my own footsteps was the only thing that mattered. I ignored the millions of mundane human thoughts bombarding my enhanced senses. My focus was razor-sharp, channeled entirely through the red energy thrumming in my wrist and the sickly black-red haze surrounding the man named Jeffrey at the newsstand. That I moved with a smooth, aggressive efficiency that was completely alien to my former clumsy self. The dark, flexible body suit felt like a part of my nervous system, moving effortlessly with every muscle twitch. Jeffrey was fumbling beneath the counter, his hands shaking, no doubt reaching for the device Lysandra had mentioned. The Dravos clinging to him writhed, their ethereal bodies vibrating with anticipation. They were close to achieving their goal. I closed the distance. When I was about $text, $10 feet away, I raised the Kaelen emitter. "Get away from the counter," I yelled, using a loud, aggressive human voice to momentarily distract Jeffrey and, more importantly, the parasites. Jeffrey looked up, his eyes vacant and terrified. The largest Dravos, draped across his shoulders like a shimmering cloak, turned its attention to me. Its form solidified slightly in a defensive posture. "Now." I fired the emitter. Crackle. A concentrated beam of pure red energy sliced through the air and struck the largest Dravos. The effect was immediate and shocking. The creature didn't explode, it screamed. A high-pitched, psychic shriek that only my Kaelen-enhanced mind could fully register. Its ethereal form instantly became solid, black chitin, forcing the air around it to distort violently. The moment the Dravos was solid, Jeffrey's body went limp, the psychic pressure removed. He collapsed, unconscious, behind the counter. The other, smaller Dravos were thrown off by the sudden crystallization of their leader. The core is solid. Eliminate. Lysandra's voice echoed in my ear, a crisp, cold command delivered telepathically through the blood bond that I didn't need the command. The rage I felt at seeing these creatures feed on human despair, coupled with the primal surge of the Kaelen blood, drove me forward that I vaulted the newsstand counter, landing next to the immobilized Jeffrey. The solidified Dravos was thrashing wildly, its black, multi-jointed legs scraping against the floor. Its temporary corporeal form was deeply unsettling, a massive, hateful insect of pure darkness that I didn't use the emitter again. That was a tool for range. Up close, I used the gift that I delivered a brutal, focused kick to the creature's core. The sheer, unnatural force generated by my new body connected with a terrifying smash. The Dravos shattered that IT broke apart into thousands of smoking black fragments that immediately dissolved into the air, leaving nothing behind but a faint, metallic odor. The black-red haze around the newsstand instantly dissipated. The smaller Dravos, now suddenly exposed and sensing the death of their leader, began to flee, shimmering violently as they tried to blend back into the crowd's energy. Too late, Lysandra's voice came again. They will retreat and reform. Get out, Elias. The job is done. The mortal systems will find Jeffrey unconscious and the situation contained. They will never know why. I looked down at Jeffrey, who was breathing shallowly, his face finally peaceful. I had saved him, and hundreds of others, from a disaster they would never comprehend. The feeling was intoxicating, a purpose stronger than anything my old life had offered that I turned, ready to follow Lysandra's retreat command, but a wave of nausea suddenly hit me, stronger than the dimensional transit. I stumbled, my vision flickering. The cost. The sheer amount of concentrated red energy I had channeled, and the raw kinetic force I had used, had put a sudden, tremendous strain on my system. I felt a sharp, burning sensation, not of a wound but of internal depletion. The regenerative system, the blue energy, was working overtime to restabilize the balance that I heard Lysandra's actual physical voice this time, close by. Idiot. You overchanneled. Never exceed power on your first mission. Your human heart, though immortal, is still used to a slower pace. I looked up. Lysandra was standing on the platform nearby, her silver-white hair gleaming in the station's light, her red eyes narrowed with a mixture of annoyance and faint concern. She extended her hand, and the very air around her pulsed with a calming electric blue. She was pouring pure blue energy into the atmosphere. Come, she commanded, the blue light stabilizing my senses. We need to recharge. The Nexus is demanding payment for your first field expenditure. I pushed myself up, feeling the immense, sudden fatigue that was the counterpoint to my new power. Immortality was a balancing act, and I had just swung too hard to one side. I was alive, I was a soldier, and I was utterly, irrevocably bound. Back in the sanctuary, the familiar, impossible calm of the Kaelen outpost settled over me, a stark contrast to the adrenaline and sensory overload of the transit hub. I was still weak, the depletion in my core feeling like a void where my energy should be. Lysandra led me directly to the Nexus. The crystalline throne pulsed violently, the red and blue energy rings orbiting the structure spinning rapidly. She sat down with an exhausted sigh, her blue-tinged skin losing some of its ethereal glow. Even an immortal alien vampire needed to rest after channeling such power. The bond demands compensation, Lysandra stated, her voice tight. The red energy you discharged requires blue energy to replace it. And the blue energy, that comes directly from the Nexus channeled through me? She pointed to a section of the crystalline panel near the seat. Place your hands here, Elias. Do not resist the flow. It will be intense. I obeyed, placing my hands on the cool, humming crystal. The moment my skin made contact, a surge of pure, electric blue energy, the very life-giving force Lysandra had described, shot up my arms. The feeling was intimate and overwhelming. It wasn't just a physical recharge, it was a sensory flood. I felt the intricate, complex network of Lysandra's biology in my own veins. I felt the echo of her centuries of existence, her profound loneliness, and the chilling, single-minded focus of the Kaelen mission. The boundary between her mind and mine blurred, facilitated by the shared substance of her blood. The blue energy flow is direct, Lysandra whispered, her eyes closed, her silver-white hair catching the intense blue light. You are absorbing the force that sustains my life. This connection is why your loyalty must be absolute, Elias. Your life is not separate from mine now. If I fall, the blue energy stabilization in your system collapses, and you will revert to your mortal state, a reversal your human heart could not survive. The pain wasn't from the energy, but from the sudden, terrifying clarity of the bond. I was not just a hired hand, I was her lifeline on this planet. And her life was inextricably linked to mine. After what felt like an eternity, the flow subsided. The nexus pulsed softly. I pulled my hands away, feeling completely revitalized, yet shaken by the invasion of privacy. You felt that, didn't you? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. My fear, my despair before. Everything. Lysandra opened her red eyes, which were now blazing with renewed strength. We are connected, vessel. I know your thoughts, your instincts, and your needs, but do not flatter yourself. Your human emotions are mostly noise to me. Your potential is all that concerns the Kaelen. She stood up, the regal, commanding figure once more. We have much to discuss before your next mission. The Kaelen are not the only alien presence on this planet, ELIAS. And they are not all parasites like the Dravos. Lysandra led me to another section of the sanctuary, a circular viewing deck that overlooked a panoramic holographic map of Earth. The map was overlaid with hundreds of flashing red, blue, and violet energy signatures. The Kaelen hierarchy is simple, Lysandra began, pointing to a small cluster of blue signals near major global capitals. We are an observation and stabilization force. Above me is the Council of Seven, a collective of the oldest and most powerful Kaelen stationed across the globe. They determine the core directives. I am an operative responsible for a single sector, this city and its periphery. You're just one of 7? I asked, surprised by the limited number. One of 7 on the council. There are others, lower-ranked agents, but they are fewer than 20 across the whole planet. We are not a legion, Elias. We are a precise, surgical instrument. I looked closer at the map. What are the violet signals? Lysandra's red eyes hardened. Those are the Xylos. The most dangerous of the terrestrial threats. They are not like the Dravos who feed on emotions. The Xylos are a rival species who arrived millennia ago. They are physical, they are organized, and they have adapted perfectly to your world. They are the true ancient vampires of your lore, the ones who drain blood for pure sustenance, not just stabilization. My heart hammered. So, there are other vampires. And they are the bad ones. They see your species as livestock. We see you as a resource to be managed and protected for the sake of cosmic balance. The distinction is crucial, Elias. Lysandra then brought up a detailed schematic on the holographic map, focusing on a deep violet signal buried beneath the city. The Xylos are led by a powerful female known as Zhara. She is the oldest and most ruthless of their kind on this continent. She has a network of thralls, human collaborators who believe they are gaining power, but are simply being fattened for the eventual harvest. And she knows you're here? She knows a Kaelen is here. She does not know I have successfully established a vessel. That is our advantage, Elias. Your existence is our secret weapon. The Xylos are powerful, but they are predictable. They operate from a hidden fortress, using their thralls to collect blood and information. She paused, looking at me with calculating intensity. Our next move must be swift. Before Zhara realizes a new force has arrived, we must cripple her supply chain. Your next mission, vessel, is an infiltration. You will become one of the thralls. The idea was insane. For me, ELIAS THORNE, to infiltrate a nest of ancient, blood-sucking vampires led by a creature named Zhara was a death wish, if death were still an option. How can I infiltrate them? I have blue-tinted blood running through my veins. They'll know I'm not human or that I'm Kaelen, I protested. Lysandra reached out and lightly touched the base of my neck where she had bitten me. Your blood is Kaelen and human. The blue energy I transferred has already done the work of blending, but more importantly, it offers camouflage. Xylos operate on a crude, base level of detection. They only smell blood and life force. She pulled up a projection of my own internal biology. My blood has amplified your life force so intensely that it registers as a massive, overflowing well of pure vitality. A Xylos will smell you, Elias, and only think, prime feast. They will see you as the highest quality of human livestock, a prize too valuable to immediately drain. They won't suspect you're a trap. So my immortality makes me irresistible bait, I summarized grimly. Precisely. And your mission is to gain access to their supply network. I need the location of their main blood storage facility, where they keep their human thralls and their collected supply. This facility is managed by a key human operative named Victor. You will befriend Victor. Lysandra handed me a small, discreet earpiece. This is a direct line to me. I will be monitoring your location from the Nexus. You will not carry the Kaelen emitter, its red energy signature is too noticeable. If you must fight, you will rely on your strength and regeneration alone. She looked at me, her red eyes intense. Remember Rule 3, Elias. No emotional attachments. Victor is not your friend. He is an obstacle. Play the desperate, broken human. That is the one thing your old life prepared you for. I nodded, feeling the weight of the lie settle over me. I had to pretend to be the man who wanted to die, only now I was an immortal weapon walking into the lair of the true predators. And how do I find this Victor? He frequents a nightclub called the Crimson Veil. A gathering spot for human thralls and their Xylos masters who enjoy the theater of preying on the weak. It's a perfect stage for a prime feast, like you, to attract attention. I looked down at my dark, sleek suit. I need clothes. Something human. Lysandra simply snapped her fingers. A new pile of perfectly tailored, expensive-looking black clothing materialized nearby. Go. Your second lesson begins. It is the lesson of deception. The Xylos must believe the biggest lie of all, that you are mortal. The nightclub, the Crimson Veil, was exactly what Lysandra had described, a beautiful, depraved theater of predation. Located in a discreet, older part of the city, its entrance was unmarked, but the velvet rope and the imposing bouncer hinted at exclusivity. The moment I walked in, I was hit by a thick wave of sensory input, heavy, pulsing techno music, the smell of expensive liquor and human pheromones, and the unsettling thrum of Xylos energy. I was dressed in the tailor-made black clothes Lysandra had provided, simple, elegant, and designed to draw attention without screaming Kaelen agent. I played the part, lost, slightly desperate and alone. Desperate and alone. My Kaelen-enhanced vision immediately cut through the superficial glamour. The club was full of people with the normal faded yellow auras of human exhaustion, but dotted among them were figures radiating a fierce, cold violet energy. These were the Xylos. They were aesthetically human, but their eyes held a predatory stillness, and their movements were unnervingly smooth. And then there were the thralls, humans with a brighter, almost manic green aura. They were completely dedicated to the Xylos, feeding them information and human victims in exchange for scraps of false power and a taste of the Xylos' intoxicating, mind-altering blood. You look like a lamb who's wandered into a butcher shop, Lysandra's voice crackled discreetly in the earpiece. Move towards the bar, Elias. Victor is there near the service entrance. He's the one with the excessively polished shoes. I navigated the crowded floor, fighting the urge to flinch every time a Xylos brushed past me. They registered my presence instantly, their violet energy flickered with interest. They smelled the intense, potent life force of the Kaelen blood in my veins. They looked at me like a gourmet meal that had just arrived. At the bar I spotted him. Victor. He was a sleek man in his 40s, with a predatory smile and indeed absurdly shiny patent leather shoes. His green aura was the brightest in the room, a testament to his high rank among the thralls. I ordered a drink and positioned myself carefully. Before I could make my move, a sudden, heavy pressure descended upon the room. The music seemed to recede, and the Xylos around the room stiffened, turning their attention toward the club's VIP area. A new figure emerged. He was taller and broader than the others, his suit flawless, and his eyes glowing with a cold, pale violet light. His energy signature was overwhelming, a tidal wave of raw, ancient power. This was clearly a second-in-command, a high-ranking Xylos. Watch him, Elias, Lysandra commanded, her voice suddenly tight. Zhara's second, Xylos. He is a pure blood. Deadly. If he recognizes the Kaelen signature, abandon the mission immediately. Xylos scanned the room. His gaze swept past the dancing thralls and paused, then fixed directly on me. His pale violet eyes narrowed. He began to walk towards me, every step slow and deliberate. My heart, though immortal, pounded a desperate, mortal rhythm. I knew that one wrong move, one flicker of the red energy from my training, would expose me. Xylos stopped right in front of me. He smelled the air, his lips curling back slightly in a silent, predatory assessment. His presence was physically chilling, making the normal clubgoers shiver instinctively. What is your name, livestock? Xylos purred, his voice a low, gravelly rasp that barely carried over the music. Elias, I said, forcing my voice to sound flat and defeated, the tone of the man who was ready to jump off a building. ELIAS THORNE. Xylos leaned closer, his violet eyes boring into mine. You smell potent. Almost criminally so. A vintage year of despair, coupled with an unprecedented vitality. Tell me, ELIAS THORNE, why does a man of such robust life force carry the scent of death on him? This was the test. Lysandra had prepared me for this. I looked away, shrugging with what I hoped was convincing apathy. I lost everything. My company, my money, my future. I'm just here looking for a permanent solution to a temporary problem. I lifted my wrist and pretended to look at a non-existent watch, a classic sign of someone waiting for a specific dark outcome. Xylos chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. Ah, the search for the easy ending. It is common. And yet, I sense power beneath your resignation. You could be so much more than a footnote. He extended a hand. His fingers were long and cold. You have the scent of a prime feast, ELIAS. And I do not permit raw talent to simply rot. You are exactly the type of recruit Victor likes to process. He is looking for those ready to trade their soul for a slice of temporary control. Xylos turned and signaled to Victor, who instantly abandoned his post and rushed over, his face beaming with eagerness to please his master. Victor, this one is yours, Xylos instructed. He is a potent vintage. Do not ruin the bouquet. Introduce him to the benefits of our patronage. Xylos gave me one last lingering, calculating look, then turned and disappeared back into the VIP section. Close call, ELIAS. He almost saw through the layer. Lysandra's voice breathed into my ear. Your performance was adequate. Now engage Victor. He is the key. Victor, the thrall, was already shaking my hand with frantic enthusiasm. ELIAS, a pleasure truly. Xylos has the best nose in the house. Come, you and I need to talk about what you can gain by losing everything. Victor led me away from the bar and into a quieter, red-lit booth. His green aura was practically shimmering with excitement. You're a find, ELIAS, Victor gushed, leaning conspiratorially close. Most of the cattle who come here are already half-eaten. You're fresh. The masters, the Xylos, they give us a chance to escape the human grind. They offer power. Power? I asked, keeping my voice flat. What kind of power? Victor lowered his voice, dropping the theatrics. Real power. You see these sad sacks dancing out there? They'll be drained dry soon enough. But we, the thralls, we help the masters manage the harvest. And in exchange, we get a taste of their blood. He pulled up his sleeve, revealing a series of faded, surgical scars on his forearm. It's intoxicating, ELIAS. A minute dose of their power. It makes you feel strong, invincible. You get to control others, to take back what the world stole. They even offer financial leverage, helping you recover what you lost. A recovery that requires me to bring them other people? I questioned, feigning disgust mixed with curiosity. A necessary transaction. Think of it as culling the weak for the benefit of the strong. If you were about to die anyway, why not spend your last bit of vitality on something meaningful? Something that matters to the masters? You get to live better, feel more before your time comes. Victor paused, his eyes gleaming with a twisted loyalty. They will never make you immortal, of course. That's a joke the masters tell. But they can make the finite time you have magnificent. Don't take the blood, ELIAS. It contains a tracking agent, Lysandra warned through the earpiece. I'm intrigued, I told Victor, leaning in. But I need proof. If I'm going to work for them, I need to know they can deliver on their promises. I need to see the operation. The real work. Victor smiled, a smug, satisfied look. Of course. No true initiate is brought in blindly. The blood storage facility is where all the magic happens. A fortress of power. I can take you there tomorrow, after the final shipment is processed. But first, he clapped me on the shoulder, you need to meet the rest of the crew and take the pledge. My heart hammered again. I had the opening. The blood storage facility. Victor's enthusiasm was grating, but it was exactly the kind of predictable human greed Lysandra had anticipated. After an hour of listening to Victor detail his fantasies of power and his disdain for the cattle, I had the information I needed. The blood storage facility was located beneath the shell of an abandoned, historical meatpacking plant on the city's waterfront. The perfect, brutal irony for a place storing human livestock. Victor gave me the rough coordinates and the scheduled time for the final shipment, tomorrow evening, my infiltration window. Excellent work, ELIAS. Now disengage, Lysandra instructed through the earpiece. I made my excuses to Victor, feigning a sudden need for fresh air. Once I was outside the club and clear of the pervasive Xylos energy, I spoke into the earpiece. Lysandra, the coordinates are 40.730610, minus 73.935242, the old Fulton Street packing plant. Shipment is scheduled $4 /text, 2300 hours, $tomorrow. Victor is leading the crew. Coordinates logged, she confirmed. Her voice was cool, but I sensed a shift in her concentration. This is significant, vessel. Crippling their main supply will draw Zara's attention immediately. You have performed the human part of the mission flawlessly. Now, return to the sanctuary for extraction and mission planning. As I turned to leave the desolate side street, I spotted Victor emerging from a back entrance of the club. He wasn't alone. He was kneeling, his face tilted up in pathetic reverence toward the towering figure of Xylos, the Xylos second in command. I stopped, watching with my enhanced Kaelen vision. Xylos wasn't speaking. He was simply looking at Victor with cold contempt. Then, Xylos performed a sickening act. He reached out and casually snapped one of Victor's fingers. Victor didn't scream. He didn't even flinch. His face, illuminated by the red glow of the club's emergency light, registered only a bizarre, blissful relief. Xylos has to remind Victor who his masters are, Lysandra explained telepathically, her voice laced with ancient understanding. The pain is a perverse reward for Victor. It solidifies his delusion that he is chosen by the Xylos, worthy of their attention. The Xylos control their thralls not just with blood, but with calculated psychological abuse. My stomach turned. The man who had been gushing about magnificent finite time was a willing slave, trading dignity for pain. It was a terrifying glimpse into the Xylos' true power. They didn't just drain blood, they systematically dismantled the human spirit. The cold feeling of purpose solidified inside me. This wasn't just a mission, it was necessary extermination. Back in the sanctuary, Lysandra wasn't satisfied with my current level of preparedness. My successful infiltration had only raised the stakes for the next stage. You managed the Dravos fight on instinct. You managed the Xylos confrontation on acting, Lysandra said, pacing the Nexus chamber. But against a prepared Xylos facility you need finesse. Your Kaelen emitter is too loud. You must learn silent neutralization. She activated the training bay. Instead of combat drones, the simulation filled with dozens of life-sized, incredibly detailed human figures, hostages, trapped amidst Xylos guards. A Xylos cannot be killed by blunt force unless you destroy the central nervous system, she explained. A punch to the head will regenerate. A severed limb will reattach. Your goal is temporary, targeted neutralization. Lysandra stood next to me, her blue-tinged skin radiating a focused intensity. The blue energy in your system, the stabilizing, life-giving force, can be weaponized. When focused, it creates a pure, cold shockwave that momentarily paralyzes the Xylos' regenerative capacity. It will freeze their nervous system for exactly $text, $45 seconds, enough time to secure a hostage or relocate a body. She put a hand on my shoulder, channeling power. The blue energy is harder to channel than the red. It requires a calm core and absolute precision, ELIAS. Focus on the feeling of stillness I gave you during the recharge. Breathe the stillness into your hands. I practiced for hours. My first attempts resulted in nothing. My concentration, still too human, was erratic. Lysandra watched, impatient but demanding. You must stop fighting the duality. You are both Kaelen and human. Use the human focus and the Kaelen power. Channel the blue energy as if you are freezing the rage and despair you felt on the 16th floor. When I finally got it right, the result was startling. A field of intense, bone-chilling blue energy erupted from my palms, striking a simulated Xylos guard. The figure immediately froze, rigid, a thin layer of frost coating its surface. $text, $45 seconds, Lysandra confirmed. The blue freeze. A silent, life-saving tool. You have less than 10 hours until deployment, ELIAS. Integrate this knowledge. Your life and the success of the Kaelen mission depends on it. The intense training left me physically charged but mentally exhausted. I sat near the Nexus, watching Lysandra work the controls, the holographic map of Earth swirling with alien signals. I had to ask, why are you doing this, Lysandra? The Xylos, the Dravos? If the Kaelen are so powerful, why don't you just destroy the entire Xylos hierarchy yourself? Why do you need a vessel? Lysandra stopped her work and slowly turned to me. Her red eyes held a flicker of something I hadn't seen before, not contempt, but vulnerability. The Xylos are a threat, but the greatest danger to the Kaelen is the prolonged exposure to your dimension, she admitted, her voice lower than usual. Our advanced senses, our ability to perceive higher dimensions, it causes a severe psychic erosion here. Over time, it leads to fragmentation, a catastrophic loss of identity and power. She gestured to the nexus. My blue energy is spent not only on stabilization but on filtering the noise of this reality. Every century I spend here, the risk increases. The Council demands results because time is my true enemy. And that's where I come in, I realized. I'm the shield. You use the strength of my human nervous system, rewritten by your blood, to absorb the dimensional distortion, allowing you to operate longer. You are the perfect insulator, she confirmed, the truth hanging heavy between us. But you are also, unexpectedly, a source of unpredictability. Your willingness to die, your sudden surge of commitment. These are variables that even Kaelen's strategy cannot fully map. She took a step closer. The proximity was startling. Do not confuse my need for you with care, Elias. I value your utility. But know this, you are currently the only living thing that can keep the Kaelen mission stable on this continent. And for that reason alone, I will protect you. The truth was harsh, cold, and entirely Kaelen. It wasn't love or affection. It was a clear statement of mutual, terrifying dependency. I was an immortal slave, but I was also indispensable. And in that terrifying truth I found a strange kind of peace. I understand, I said, meeting her gaze. I'm your anchor. Let's go secure the facility. The waterfront was desolate. The chill of the harbor wind whipped around the massive, decaying structure of the old Fulton Street packing plant. It was $text, $22.50, 10 minutes before the scheduled arrival of the Xylos shipment. Lysandra and I were perched on the rooftop of a warehouse across the street, concealed by a field of shimmering blue energy Lysandra generated. I was back in the dark bodysuit, the Kaelen emitter strapped to my wrist, and the knowledge of the blue freeze heavy in my hands. The air is thick with violet energy, Lysandra whispered, her voice a low hum in the earpiece. The Xylos have established a powerful perimeter. They are using human thralls as spotters. You must be silent, Elias. Any sound above a whisper and your life force, potent as it is, will be detected immediately. I scanned the plant with my enhanced vision. The building was dark, but my Kaelen sight picked up multiple green auras, the thralls, patrolling the perimeter. They looked like desperate, jumpy men carrying flashlights and crude automatic weapons. I see 4 thralls on the ground level. 2 on the roof, I reported. Focus on Victor. He will be at the main dock entrance to receive the shipment, Lysandra instructed. Your objective remains the same, neutralize Victor and locate the main blood storage chamber. I will maintain the blue energy veil over us. Once you are inside, you are alone. I took a deep, steadying breath. This was the moment of truth, where my new, terrible strength would be tested against the evil I was masquerading among. I moved first. Sliding off the roof, I dropped the $text, $30 feet to the street with the controlled grace of my immortal body, landing soundlessly on the dirty asphalt. My enhanced senses told me a thrall was approaching my position from around the corner. The man, his green aura pulsing nervously, rounded the corner, his flashlight beam sweeping across the empty street. He was looking for danger in the mundane, never expecting the supernatural. I didn't give him a chance. Moving with the blinding speed that was now second nature, I closed the distance, channeling the newly mastered blue energy into my open palm. Crack. My hand clamped over his mouth, cutting off his surprise. Simultaneously, the silent, freezing blue energy shot into his nervous system. The thrall instantly stiffened, his eyes wide and glazed over with a thin film of frost, his body rigid in the middle of his patrol stride. The blue freeze was perfectly executed. 1 down, I reported, gently lowering the frozen man into the shadow of a rusted dumpster. Effective, Elias. Maintain this efficiency, Lysandra praised, a rare hint of approval in her voice. I moved toward the main docks, where the largest concentration of green energy, Victor's crew, awaited the shipment. I slipped through a broken window near the loading dock, the Kaelen bodysuit granting me complete silence. Inside, the massive warehouse space was poorly lit, filled with the shadows of abandoned machinery and the smell of dried blood and decay. I quickly neutralized 2 more thralls with the blue freeze, leaving them as frozen statues leaning against pillars. I was getting faster, more precise. The cold, focused power of the blue energy felt like a clean, moral antidote to the Dravos' despair and the Xylos' cruelty. I located Victor near the massive dock door, speaking urgently into a radio, his green aura alight with anxious energy. He was surrounded by 4 remaining thralls, all armed and jumpy. I stepped out from behind a stack of rusted barrels. Victor, I called out, my voice echoing slightly in the vast space. Victor whirled around, instantly recognizing me. His face contorted from anxiety to pure shock, then rage. Elias, you're early. And where's the rest of the crew? Did you think you could skip the pledge? The pledge is meaningless, Victor, I replied, standing my ground. And your crew is taking a time out. They're frozen. Victor's eyes darted around the shadows, then back to me. He finally realized something was terribly wrong. He raised his handgun, his hand shaking, his green aura sputtering. You're not a recruit. What are you? A cop. You smell too good for a cop. I'm an exterminator, I stated simply. I raised the Kaelen emitter. You're going to tell me where the blood storage facility is, and then you're going to take your last nap. Victor shrieked, a high-pitched, manic sound, and opened fire. The 4 thralls instantly joined him, unleashing a torrent of gunfire. The bullets tore into my chest and limbs. The impact was brutal, throwing me backward against the cold concrete wall. The pain was sharp, intense, and over almost instantly. I didn't scream this time. I felt the agony, the tearing of the flesh, the shattering of bone, and then, milliseconds later, the furious, burning surge of the Kaelen blood, fusing bone, knitting muscle, sealing skin. My body was instantly, perfectly repaired. I stood up, completely whole, my suit already sealing the entry points of the bullets. The sheer, terrifying invulnerability of my immortal state was on full display. Victor and his thralls froze, their faces masks of horror. The guns went silent. Impossible, Victor choked out, dropping his weapon. The terror finally overwhelmed his thrall conditioning. Nothing is impossible now, Victor, I said, walking toward him, the sound of my steps echoing his defeat. I raised the emitter, preparing to neutralize him permanently. Just as I prepared to fire the emitter's red energy beam, a secondary alarm began to wail deep within the building, a high-pitched, non-human frequency. Elias, stop. The Xylos have detected the disturbance. Lysandra's voice was sharp with urgency. The shipment is approaching. Victor is irrelevant now. Find the facility. Look for the highest concentration of stored life force. I didn't waste time on Victor. I simply kicked his weapon aside. He was a broken man, his fate sealed by his masters. I focused my Kaelen senses inward, ignoring the persistent ringing of the alarm. Deep beneath the floor there was a pull, a cold, sickening magnet of human life force. It was the concentrated energy of hundreds of victims. The blood storage chamber. I spotted a hidden, reinforced door tucked behind a wall of old refrigerators. A single, small keypad glowed with Xylos markings. I charged the door. Not with energy but with the full, devastating force of my immortal body. Crash. The heavy metal door buckled and tore from its hinges. I stepped through into a steep, metallic stairwell that descended into the earth. At the bottom of the stairs the air changed. It was freezing cold and sterile, smelling strongly of iron and antiseptic. The room was massive, brightly lit, and horrifying. It was not a storage room for blood, but for vessels. Dozens of young men and women were housed in clear, cryogenic-like units, suspended in a pale liquid. They were not dead, they were in a forced, deep hibernation, their yellow auras dimmed but present. Wires and tubes ran from their bodies to complex machinery that was slowly, methodically, draining their life force and collecting it into massive chilled tanks. This was the Xylos' true harvest, the systematic, clinical consumption of human potential. The magnitude of the evil hit me harder than any bullet. I was supposed to be dead, but I was here, facing this. I raised the Kaelen emitter, ready to incinerate the machinery, but stopped. Elias, wait. You can't destroy the machinery. Lysandra's voice was a harsh warning. The sudden loss of the hibernation field will kill every one of them instantly. You need to find the master control and initiate an immediate, controlled systemic shutdown. I looked around the enormous, freezing chamber. I had found the heart of the Xylos operation, but destroying it was far more complicated than fighting a few thralls. My mission had just entered a new, critical phase. The blood storage chamber was a chilling fortress of advanced, horrifying technology. The high-pitched alarm was deafening, echoing off the metal walls and the cryogenic units holding the unconscious human captives. Lysandra, where is the master control? I demanded, my voice raw. I scanned the room, the urgency of the situation, the ticking clock before the Xylos shipment arrived, hammering in my mind. Look for the central energy conduit, Elias. It will be near the core processing tanks, Lysandra instructed, her voice tight with focus. I'm detecting Xylos signatures. They're at the dock. Xylos is among them. I located a complex panel of alien machinery, glowing with faint violet energy, tucked into the wall behind the largest tanks. It was protected by 2 heavy rotating defense turrets that were now snapping to attention. The turrets opened fire, not with bullets, but with high-frequency sonic pulses designed to scramble a mortal nervous system. My immortal body registered the attack as an overwhelming wave of noise and vibration, painful even to my Kaelen-enhanced senses. I threw myself behind a row of cryogenic units. They're sonic. I need a shield. You don't have time. Use the blue freeze to disable them. Lysandra commanded. But only the turrets, Elias. Do not hit the hibernation units. I burst from cover, running low, channeling both my speed and my focused blue energy. I charged the first turret and slammed my palm against its metallic casing, unleashing a concentrated blast. The turret instantly frosted over and went silent. I spun and hit the second one just as it was winding up for another blast. With the defense turrets neutralized, I leaped onto the master panel. The controls were alien, a lattice of smooth, glowing controls and incomprehensible symbols. I can't read this, Lysandra. I am remote accessing the Nexus now. Give me 5 seconds to interface with the Xylos coding. As I waited, holding my breath, I heard the sound that froze the blood in my veins, the rhythmic, heavy footsteps of a creature that knew its own power, echoing down the metal stairwell. Lysandra. I hear them. It's Xylos. Damn it. The dimensional transit must have exposed my shield, Lysandra cursed. Elias, I cannot leave the Nexus to come to you. The Xylos must not know the Kaelen are here. My cover is more important than your extraction. You must hold the chamber. The brutal truth of Rule 2, never question my direct commands, slammed into me. I was disposable. The mission was not. I understand, I grit my teeth. I was abandoned, but I was immortal. A tall figure, radiating a cold, overwhelming violet aura, stepped into the chamber. It was Xylos. He surveyed the damage, the shattered door, the frozen turrets, and the panicked thrall Victor, who was now hiding under a machine. Xylos's face was a mask of cold fury. The prime feast has teeth, Xylos sneered, his eyes locking onto me. And you smell of the Kaelen. You are not just a bait, you are a vessel. The blood storage chamber became a gladiatorial arena. Xylos moved with a fluid, terrifying grace, his hands morphing into claws tipped with dark, glistening talons. The Kaelen are weak, Xylos taunted, circling me slowly. Always hiding, always sending their puppets to do the dirty work. I will enjoy tearing the immortality out of your throat, vessel. I knew better than to try and punch him. Lysandra's teaching flashed through my mind. Xylos regenerate instantly. I had to go for the central nervous system. Xylos lunged, an explosion of violet energy. I was fast, but he was ancient. His talons sliced across my chest. The pain was excruciating, worse than the bullets, because his attack was laced with a venomous Xylos psychic energy intended to disrupt Kaelen regeneration. Ching. My body screamed. The wounds instantly began to close, but the agony lingered, slowing me down. I stumbled back, my vision flickering. Slow regeneration, Elias. Use the emitter. Lysandra yelled in my ear, her voice a lifeline. I raised my wrist and fired the Kaelen emitter, unleashing a precise beam of focused red energy at Xylos's head. Xylos didn't dodge, he simply raised his hand. A thin, shimmering violet shield appeared and deflected the beam harmlessly into the ceiling. Crude, Xylos mocked. Your fire is easily managed. He attacked again, his speed blurring. This time I met him. I knew my strength was raw kinetic force and regeneration. I absorbed a punishing blow to the stomach, which nearly knocked the air out of my immortal lungs, and countered with a powerful, desperate elbow strike aimed at his jaw. Crack. Xylos staggered back. My enhanced strength was enough to stun him momentarily, but the Xylos regeneration kicked in immediately. The bone in his face snapped back into place, leaving only a faint red line. But the stagger bought me time. I channeled the intense, freezing blue energy into my hands and unleashed a wide-area shockwave towards the master control panel. The energy was meant to disable the Xylos technology. System-wide blue disruption initiated. Lysandra shouted triumphantly in my earpiece. Elias, I'm hijacking the code. Get clear. Xylos roared, realizing my true objective. He lunged at me, his eyes blazing with murderous intent. You will not touch the harvest. As Xylos charged, the master control panel behind him flared a brilliant blue, violently overriding the system's protective violet glow. The cryogenic units sputtered, the life force conduits shutting down. The harvest was dead. Xylos felt the loss instantly, a profound, devastating blow to his very purpose. He diverted his attack from me and slammed his fists into the control panel, trying to restart the process. It's over, Xylos. I shouted, grabbing the terrified thrall Victor by his collar. The system is sealed, Elias. Now get out. Before Xylos fully realizes the extent of the damage, Lysandra urged. Xylos turned, his face a mask of incandescent, ancient rage. The destruction of the facility had temporarily depleted him, but his hate was a tangible force. You have destroyed centuries of work, Kaelen puppet. Zhara will make your eternity a living hell. I didn't argue. I didn't fight. My primary mission was complete. The Xylos supply was crippled. I used the raw kinetic power of my immortal body and threw Victor, the pathetic, sniveling thrall, up the metal stairwell like a ragdoll. He would live to face whatever punishment Xylos decided, but I needed him out of the immediate combat zone. I ran toward the battered door, not looking back, knowing Xylos was right behind me. I burst into the dark warehouse, the alarm still ringing. I found the thralls I had frozen earlier and quickly unfroze them with a precise, low-frequency pulse of red energy. They awoke, confused and disoriented, their thrall conditioning broken by the trauma. Go. Run. The building is compromised. I screamed at them, my voice echoing. I heard the sound of the steel door being ripped from its hinges as Xylos emerged, his violet aura now crackling with uncontained fury. You can't hide from me, vessel, he bellowed. I looked up at the ceiling of the warehouse. It was rickety, rusted metal. I funneled all my remaining red energy into one massive blast from the emitter, not at Xylos, but at the weakest structural support beam above him. Kaboom! The red energy beam struck the beam with devastating force. The metal groaned, then fractured, and a cascade of heavy machinery and rubble crashed down onto the warehouse floor, obscuring Xylos's position and buying me precious seconds. The extraction point, Elias. The far end of the dock. Lysandra's voice guided me. I ran, my immortal body finally showing signs of strain, the pain from the Xylos venom a dull, persistent throb. I had escaped, but I knew Xylos would not rest. I had just declared war on the Xylos Queen Zhara and her most loyal lieutenant. I barely made it back to the extraction point. Lysandra, abandoning the blue energy concealment, stood exposed on the dock, radiating a furious wave of red energy to keep the Xylos at bay. The moment I reached her, she gripped my arm with chilling strength, and the world dissolved into the horrifying whirl of dimensional transit. We rematerialized in the deepest core of the sanctuary, far from the nexus. Lysandra immediately forced me onto a crystalline couch, and the intense blue energy of the healing chamber enveloped me. This was a sustained, deep recharge, far more potent than anything I'd experienced before. The agonizing, slow-burning pain from Xylos's Xylos venom was finally neutralized, replaced by a pure, invigorating flood of Kaelen life force. While I stabilized, Lysandra walked to the nexus, her blue-tinged skin pale with fury and exhaustion. She initiated a secure, encrypted communication, and the large holographic map of Earth focused on 7 massive, swirling blue energy signatures, the Council of 7. You were reckless, Lysandra, a voice boomed from the projection, cold and authoritative. It was the Council's leader, a Kaelen whose features were even more ancient and severe than Lysandra's. The Xylos now know a vessel exists, and that the Kaelen are operating actively. The rules of non-intervention have been jeopardized. Lysandra stood tall, her silver-white hair radiating defiance. The threat of Zhara's consolidation was imminent. The blood storage facility was a critical vulnerability. The operation was a success. The Xylos lost decades of resources. At the cost of our millennia of secrecy, another voice, sharp and female, hissed. We cannot allow this vessel, ELIAS THORNE, to continue to operate. His aggressive profile is a liability. You will terminate the bond and neutralize the vessel. The mission is more important than your attachment to a singular asset. Terminate the bond. The words hit me like a physical blow. If the bond was terminated, the stabilizing blue energy in my system would collapse, and I would revert to my mortal, dying state. My short, terrifying immortality would end. I watched Lysandra turn her back to me, facing the council. The bond will not be terminated, Lysandra stated, her voice iron. ELIAS THORNE is not a liability. He is now compromised, yes, but he is a necessary anchor. The Xylos will prioritize hunting the vessel, leaving them predictable. I request permission to use Elias as a direct target for Zhara. The council was silent for a terrifying moment. Finally the leader responded. Your risk is approved, Lysandra. But if the vessel fails, you will answer to the full weight of the Kaelen law. He is your creation. He is your responsibility. Zhara will come for him. The council signatures dissolved. Lysandra was alone, breathing heavily, facing the quiet, terrifying solitude of her victory. She hadn't denied the termination because of care, but because of utility. I was now the bait. The deep recharge finished and I sat up, feeling a fresh wave of potent energy coursing through me. I was completely healed, but the conversation with the council had left a deeper wound. You heard them, I stated, my voice devoid of inflection. You offered me up as bait. Lysandra didn't deny it. She slowly walked toward a far wall of the sanctuary, touching a concealed panel. The crystalline structure shimmered, revealing a recessed compartment holding a single, unassuming object, a small, silver-framed photograph. I don't need your approval, Elias, Lysandra said, her tone softening almost imperceptibly as she looked at the photo. But you need to understand the cost of this war, and the nature of the council's fury. The photograph was old, slightly faded, showing a handsome, kind-faced man, undeniably human, smiling into the camera. He was wearing a military uniform from what looked like the mid-20th century. Who is that? I asked, compelled by the sudden crack in her ancient composure. That was my first vessel, Lysandra revealed, her red eyes fixed on the image. His name was Kaelen. A human soldier I bonded with during your planet's Second Great War. He was everything you are, quick, resilient, and utterly loyal. My immortal heart skipped a beat. Kaelen? You named your species hierarchy after a human? Lysandra shook her silver-white head. No. Our species is the Lytheni. Kaelen was the name of the man I loved. He was destroyed by the Xylos when I was forced to abandon him to fulfill a critical directive from the Council of Seven. The revelation was shocking. This cold, calculating alien had once loved a mortal. The Council forced me to leave him to save a city, Lysandra continued, her voice heavy with centuries of regret. When I returned, the Xylos had found him. They executed him slowly, not for his blood, but for his Lytheni loyalty. After that, I returned to the Council and renamed my operating faction Kaelen, to ensure they never forgot the cost of prioritizing secrecy over the asset. I looked at the photograph and then at Lysandra. The truth of her character, her absolute dedication to the mission, masked by an ancient, self-imposed coldness, snapped into place. She wasn't just a soldier, she was a warrior driven by a trauma so profound she had internalized it as her species' name. They want me neutralized, I said quietly, looking at the picture of Kaelen. Because they fear you will let history repeat itself and choose the vessel over the mission again. Precisely, Lysandra confirmed, carefully replacing the photograph. And I cannot afford to fail this time. Your survival, Elias, is my one act of defiance against the Council's dictates. You are the bait, yes. But you are bait I intend to protect. The mission shifted immediately. We were no longer hunting the Xylos, we were preparing for the Xylos to hunt us. Xylos has reported the loss of the blood storage chamber and the existence of a Kaelen vessel, Lysandra explained, standing before the holographic map. The Xylos Queen Zhara will see this as an intolerable invasion. She won't send more thralls, she will come herself or send a team of her purest blood Xylos. Where will she look? I asked. She will look for where you last hid, Lysandra replied, pointing to the general area of the city where the sanctuary was located. But the sanctuary is impenetrable. We need to draw her away from our base and onto neutral ground, a place where your abilities can be fully utilized without risking the Council's intervention. Lysandra began to trace a location on the map, an enormous, decaying, decommissioned hydroelectric dam far outside the city limits. The complex, isolated structure was perfect for a massive, unobserved confrontation. Your life force, amplified by my blood, is a beacon to their kind, she explained. We will intensify the signal. We will lure Zhara and her elite guards to the canyon dam. I will give you a temporary concentrated dose of blue energy that will make you irresistible, the most potent, prime feast they have ever encountered. And what will you be doing? I asked. Lysandra reached up and touched the back of my neck where the Kaelen blood entered my system. Her red eyes held a terrifying resolve. I will be the hunter. I will use the distraction of your signal to ambush them. But the initial confrontation, Elias, must be yours. You must hold them off until I can secure the advantage. You will be facing Xylos far more powerful than Xylos. I felt the familiar thrum of the red energy surge beneath my skin, now coupled with the profound weight of my new shared history with Lysandra. I wasn't fighting just for survival, I was fighting to prove the Council wrong, and to avenge the first vessel, Kaelen. Prepare the signal, Lysandra, I said, looking out at the holographic map. Let's give Zhara the feast she can't resist. The sanctuary felt tense, humming with the contained energy of preparation. Lysandra stood before the nexus, holding a small, crystalline vial filled with a substance that glowed with a frantic, hyper-concentrated blue energy. "This is the lure ELIAS," Lysandra explained, her voice low and serious. "It's pure, condensed stabilizing force. When this is introduced into your system, your life force beacon will be amplified 1,000-fold. The Xylos will smell the most irresistible, prime feast they have ever encountered. Zhara will not be able to resist." I felt a surge of fear, not the fear of death but the fear of being overwhelmed. I was the bait and the lure was designed to attract a queen. Will it affect my ability to fight? My red energy? I asked, looking at the vial. "It will enhance it, but it will also make you dangerously attractive," Lysandra confirmed. "The Xylos will attempt to paralyze you, not destroy you. They will want to drain this life force slowly. Use that hesitation. Use your blue freeze to disable them, and your red emitter only as a last resort." I nodded, accepting the risk. I sat down and Lysandra performed the quick, clean injection at the base of my neck. The effect was instantaneous and staggering. My senses exploded. The world became a symphony of light and feeling. The blue energy coursing through me felt like liquid ecstasy, overpowering the lingering pain of the Xylos venom. I was a walking supernova of vitality. Lysandra looked at me, her red eyes wide with a brief flicker of admiration, before quickly regaining her composure. "The signal is active. We are deploying now. Remember your objective: survival and distraction." The dimensional transit was cleaner this time. The Kaelen blood in my veins handled the shift with relative ease. We materialized inside the massive, abandoned hydroelectric plant, the Canyon Dam. The location was immense, desolate, and perfect for a battle. Rusted turbines stood like ancient gods in the main chamber, and deep, dark tunnels led off into the structure's core. Water still dripped somewhere below, amplifying the oppressive silence. "I will take up a position on the upper catwalk, where I can monitor the incoming threats and maintain the sanctuary's dimensional anchor," Lysandra stated, her silver-white hair barely visible in the dark industrial space. "You will wait here in the main turbine chamber, ELIAS. This location will be the killing floor." As she moved away, her blue-tinged skin merging into the shadows, I felt the terrifying magnetic pull of the hyper-concentrated blue energy working. It wasn't just attracting the Xylos, it was screaming my location to them. I waited. The silence was heavy, broken only by the echo of my own immortal heartbeat. I checked the Kaelen emitter on my wrist, feeling the dual power of red and blue energy thrumming through my veins. Then the silence broke. Not with a sound but with an overwhelming, cold presence. The Xylos had arrived. 3 distinct, powerful violet energy signatures pierced the darkness. They hadn't used a dimensional jump. They were too arrogant for that. They had used raw speed. They burst through the main concrete archway, moving as a lethal, synchronized unit. These were not thralls and they were not Xylos. They were taller, their faces less human, their violet eyes blazing with hunger. Zhara's advanced team. The leader, a Xylos whose energy signature dwarfed the other 2, stopped and inhaled deeply, savoring the scent of the lure. "The feast," the leader growled, his voice a dry whisper. "It is real. Such purity, such a rich, deep life force. Tell me, little vessel, who could afford to waste such a vintage on a trap?" The Xylos leader was formidable, muscular and clad in what looked like ancient, segmented leather armor. The 2 others fanned out, their attention fixed entirely on me, their powerful violet auras radiating anticipation. "You have destroyed the blood storage," I stated, trying to keep my voice steady. "The Kaelen will not tolerate your presence here any longer." The leader threw his head back and laughed, a sound like crumbling stone. "The Kaelen? That pathetic faction of frightened, rule-bound Lytheni? They haven't had the courage to fight us for 5 centuries. They send a young, fresh-smelling puppet to do their dying for them." He launched the first attack. It was not a physical assault. He extended his hand and a wave of pure, concentrated violet psychic energy struck me, aiming to paralyze my nervous system. The pain was immediate and overwhelming, designed to shut down my will. But the hyper-concentrated blue energy lure immediately fought back. It was a war inside my head, the Xylos' psychic paralysis against the Kaelen's life-giving stability. I staggered but I didn't fall. "He resists," the leader exclaimed, genuinely surprised. "I don't just resist," I spat, fighting through the mental haze. "I fight back." I lunged forward, ignoring the second wave of psychic attack, and focused all my concentration on the first Xylos guard to my left. He was attempting to flank me. I channeled the blue freeze, aiming not for the kill but for the stall. A cold, focused wave of blue energy exploded from my hand and slammed into the Xylos. He immediately froze, his body rigid, trapped in a layer of frost, but his violet energy was too strong. The freeze would only last about $text, $20 seconds. 1 down, 2 to go, Lysandra's voice, calm and steady, was in my ear. Excellent use of the lure's resistance, Elias. Now focus on the leader. The Xylos leader, furious at the sight of his comrade frozen, charged me. His talons emerged, sharper and longer than Xylos's. This time, I knew he was aiming to slice my spinal cord to permanently disrupt the Kaelen bond. I raised my arms to defend myself, preparing to meet the assault head-on, when a massive surge of red energy from the unseen Lysandra ripped through the chamber, momentarily blinding all three of us. Ambush! The Xylos leader roared, distracted. Lysandra's attack had bought me a precious second. I used it to fire the Kaelen emitter. Not at the leader but at the rusted, weight-bearing turbine chain hanging directly above him. Crackle. The red energy beam struck the metal chain, snapping it. With a deafening shriek of tearing metal, the massive, several-ton turbine fell. The Xylos leader, ancient and strong, managed to leap out of the way, but the falling structure crushed the second Xylos guard under its immense weight. I looked at the wreckage. The first Xylos was still struggling in the blue freeze. The second was certainly eliminated. But the leader, now caked in rust and dust, rose from the rubble. His eyes were no longer focused on the feast, they were fixed on the source of my power, Lysandra, hidden on the catwalk. The Lytheni. You sent your puppet to distract me, the leader shrieked, his voice filled with venomous realization. You will pay for this, vessel. The Xylos leader, enraged by the destruction of his comrade and the realization of Lysandra's ambush, leaped over the wreckage of the turbine. His target was no longer me, the feast, but the true enemy, Lysandra, hidden high on the catwalk. Lytheni cowered. Show yourself, he roared, channeling massive amounts of violet energy. I couldn't allow it. If the Xylos reached Lysandra, the nexus anchor she maintained would be broken, potentially collapsing the dimensional transit back to the sanctuary and leaving us both stranded and vulnerable. More importantly, I knew the bitter history of her first vessel, Kaelen. I wouldn't let her be forced to abandon another. I sprinted toward the wall beneath the catwalk, moving with a furious burst of speed fueled by the remaining blue energy lure. The Xylos leader was about to jump. I reached the wall and, channeling the last of my focused blue energy, executed the most dangerous move of my training. I slammed both hands against the concrete and unleashed a massive, unfocused blue energy shockwave. The blast wasn't subtle. It was a pure, explosive cone of freezing force aimed at disrupting the Xylos' jump and simultaneously creating a physical barrier. The wall cracked violently, and a sheet of ice coated the nearby floor. The Xylos leader was thrown back, shrieking in pain as the force hit his hardened skin. Elias, what are you doing? You've exhausted your stability reserves. Lysandra's voice snapped in my ear, a raw mix of fury and alarm. I'm protecting the anchor. I gasped, stumbling backward, the sudden, complete depletion of the blue energy leaving me momentarily weak and dizzy. The Xylos leader, recovering faster than I was, rose, his violet eyes now fixed solely on me, radiating pure, murderous intent. He launched himself again, this time with a terrifying, singular focus to silence me forever. Bzzzzzzzzzzzzz. Suddenly, the air was torn by a sound that dwarfed the earlier sonic blasts. A beam of incandescent, burning red light, far stronger than my Kaelen emitter, slammed into the Xylos leader's chest. It wasn't a pulse, it was a sustained laser of pure red energy. The leader screamed a non-human psychic sound of agony as his body was instantly engulfed in crimson fire, melting his ancient armor and his flesh into a smoking puddle of black residue. Lysandra had used the concentrated power of the Nexus anchor itself. I looked up. Lysandra stood on the catwalk, bathed in the residual crimson glow, the massive device on her wrist, which I hadn't seen before, slowly cooling down. Her red eyes were wide, strained, and filled with a terrifying, protective ferocity. The dust from the sudden violent death of the Xylos leader hadn't even settled when a new, profound presence descended upon the dam. It was cold, deep, and so utterly powerful that the very air seemed to vibrate in submission. The Xylos queen, Lysandra breathed into my earpiece, her voice tight with professional dread. Zhara has arrived. Her signature is vast. Get to the secondary tunnel, immediately. The main entrance archway was suddenly filled by a figure whose appearance dwarfed even the imposing presence of Xylos. Zhara. She was strikingly beautiful, with long braided black hair and skin that was unnaturally smooth, But her violet eyes were not merely predatory, they held the weary, casual cruelty of a creature who had ruled for millennia. She wore simple black garments that seemed to absorb the light, emphasizing her chilling grace. Her violet energy aura was so intense it felt like a physical pressure on my chest. Zhara looked at the smoking remains of her lieutenant, then up at Lysandra on the catwalk and finally down at me, the vulnerable bait, slumped against the wall. A Lytheni anchor, and a fresh, insolent vessel, Zhara purred, her voice carrying an ancient, mesmerizing cadence that almost compelled obedience. You destroy my harvest, Lysandra, and you assassinate my general. This transgression requires more than just retribution. She raised her hand toward Lysandra. The movement was slow, deliberate, and terrifyingly powerful. A massive wave of concentrated violet energy surged toward the catwalk. Lysandra screamed a word I didn't recognize, a command in the Lytheni language, and unleashed a huge, protective dome of blue energy around herself just as Zara's wave hit. The impact shook the entire dam structure, sending debris raining down. Lysandra's shield held, but I could see the strain on her face. She is too strong for a direct engagement, Elias. Lysandra yelled through the bond. I can hold her, but I cannot fight. Find the dam's core stabilizer. If you overload it, the resulting dimensional distortion will force Zhara to retreat before she can shatter my shield. My legs felt like lead, but I forced myself to move. I was the distraction. I was the bait. I ran into the dark, rusted labyrinth of the lower tunnels. The tunnels were dark, wet, and echoing. I relied entirely on my Kaelen sight to navigate, following the strongest, most stable energy signature, the dam's structural core stabilizer. Behind me, I heard the colossal sound of Lysandra and Zhara's struggle, the relentless, thundering impact of violet energy against the desperate, high-pitched resistance of blue energy. I found the core stabilizer in the deepest sublevel, a massive, central pillar of reinforced steel, laced with thick power conduits. It looked impossibly solid. I found it. It's massive. How do I overload it? I asked, my voice shaky. You must strike it with a full-force red energy blast, Elias. The energy will destabilize the molecular structure, causing an immediate, localized dimensional fracture. It will be a suicide attack on my shield. Lysandra warned that I raised the Kaelen emitter. My energy reserves were nearly empty, but the desperation of the moment forced me to channel every remaining particle of Kaelen blood into the device. As I prepared to fire, a new voice spoke, cold and familiar, right behind me. A heroic effort, vessel, but you won't live to see the explosion. It was Xylos. Battered, covered in soot and blood, his face a mask of ruined fury, he had survived the collapse of the warehouse and tracked me here. His violet aura was weak, but his talons were fully extended. He was here for the kill. I will take my payment now, ELIAS THORNE. He lunged at I dodged the initial attack and in a flash of desperate inspiration, fired the emitter not at Xylos, but into the nearest power conduit of the dam. Crackle. The conduit exploded, bathing the tunnel in sparks and smoke. Xylos screamed, blinded and temporarily stunned by the energy feedback. Elias. Now or never. Lysandra's voice was raw with pain. Her blue shield was failing. I turned back to the core stabilizer, charged my emitter, and prepared the final destructive strike, when I felt a sudden, sharp pain in my side. Xylos had recovered faster than I thought and plunged a talon into my immortal flesh, disrupting my concentration. Just as the talon tore through my side, a second attack came, but it wasn't from Xylos. A whip-fast chain of pure violet energy shot from the main chamber and slammed into Xylos, lifting him off the ground and pinning him violently against the tunnel wall. It was Zhara. Xylos. He is mine to dispatch. Zara's voice thundered, sounding right next to me. Zhara stood at the tunnel entrance, looking at Xylos with utter contempt. A weak fool who fails his queen. You will cease this foolishness, Xylos. We have a greater threat. She looked at me, her violet eyes locking onto mine. Lysandra's shield is about to shatter, vessel. We have a momentary choice. If you fire that weapon, the dimensional rift will consume us all. I cannot retrieve my forces and Lysandra cannot retrieve her vessel. We stop the fighting now. The realization hit me. Zhara wasn't afraid of me, she was afraid of the consequences of the dimensional tear. My suicide mission was her strategic nightmare. Zhara released Xylos, who collapsed, broken. She then gave me a terrifying, cold smile. Put the weapon down, ELIAS THORNE. You have my attention. We will call a temporary truce. The atmosphere in the subterranean tunnel of the canyon dam was thick with shattered concrete, the stench of ozone and suppressed rage. The massive sounds of battle had ceased, replaced by the silence of a tense, temporary truce. Zhara, the Xylos queen, stood at the tunnel entrance, her violet eyes blazing with contempt and calculation. Xylos, her lieutenant, lay broken nearby, unable to move but glaring murderously. I stood near the damaged core stabilizer, my Kaelen emitter still aimed, my body running on fumes. Lysandra, abandoning the shattered remains of her blue energy shield, glided down from the catwalk. Her blue-tinged skin was streaked with soot, and her silver-white hair was disheveled, but her posture was one of cold, unwavering authority. "The weapon, Elias," Lysandra instructed, her voice calm but firm. "Lower it. The truce is accepted." I slowly lowered the emitter, my hand shaking slightly. The risk was monumental, but Lysandra's confidence was absolute. Zhara watched my compliance, then fixed her gaze on Lysandra. "You risk total dimensional collapse for a mere vessel, Lytheni. Your sentimentality will be your downfall as always. And your myopia will be yours, Zhara," Lysandra countered, stepping toward the queen. "The vessel's recklessness has achieved what centuries of negotiation failed to do, force us to focus on the true threat." Zhara sneered. "The true threat? There is no greater threat than your faction's interference." Lysandra ignored the insult and pointed her hand, not in accusation but in an ancient gesture of shared knowledge, toward the dark tunnels. "The Dravos did not orchestrate the blood storage attack, Zhara. And they did not influence the collapse of the vessel's human life." Lysandra's red eyes narrowed, looking far past the crumbling walls of the dam. "The Ymir. They are here." The name hung in the air, cold and heavy. Zara's face, for the first time, showed a flicker of something other than cruelty, a deep, ancient fear. "The Ymir?" Zhara whispered, her voice losing its predatory edge, replaced by shock. "That is impossible. The Treaty of the First Dimension forbids their passage." "Treaties mean nothing to them," Lysandra scoffed. "My intelligence network has been tracking anomalous energy spikes, not Xylos violet or Kaelen blue/red, but an entirely separate signature. A cold, dead white energy. They are beings of pure, entropic corruption. They feed on all non-Ymir life and energy, Lytheni, Xylos, and human. They leave nothing but sterile entropy behind." I realized the gravity of the situation. My small war against the Xylos was just a skirmish in the shadow of a cosmic threat. "Your Dravos intelligence was contaminated, Lysandra," Zhara argued, her composure returning, but her body language still strained. "My primary intelligence indicated Kaelen aggression. And my intelligence, backed by the near suicide of my vessel, proves otherwise," Lysandra pressed. "The Ymir are here to target the highest concentrations of life force energy, the Xylos blood stores and the Kaelen nexus. Your arrogance made you the perfect target for them to frame." Lysandra pointed to me. "The vessel's original despair was seeded by Ymir's psychic corrosion, making him vulnerable to the Dravos. The Ymir are using the existing conflict to thin our numbers and distract us before they launch their final attack." She paused, then delivered the ultimate ultimatum. "The Ymir are not subtle, Zhara. They plan to use this dam's massive power infrastructure to broadcast a localized entropy field across the entire continent, sterilizing the life force of every single living thing. If that happens, there will be no more feast for the Xylos and no more mission for the Kaelen. Only a dead planet." Zhara was silent, weighing the threat to her eternal existence against her millennia of hatred for the Kaelen. The choice was clear. "What is the protocol?" Zhara finally asked, the question dripping with forced cooperation. "The Ymir Protocol," Lysandra stated firmly. "A temporary full-spectrum Lytheni-Xylos alliance. We must neutralize the Ymir anchor inside the dam before the entropic field broadcast begins. We work together or we both die." The alliance was formalized not with a handshake, but with a terrifying, shared silence. Lysandra initiated a low-frequency blue energy broadcast to establish a temporary, secure telepathic channel between her, me, and Zhara. Lysandra's voice echoed in my mind, cold and clear. "Agreed. Where is the Ymir anchor? And what is its defense?" Zara's voice replied, a startling velvety sound that was terrifying in its intimacy. I looked at the Xylos queen and the Kaelen agent, two forces of cosmic predation, now forced to rely on each other. And I, ELIAS THORNE, the human who was about to jump off a building, was the only thing holding their communication together. "The Ymir anchor is in the dam's deepest chamber, the main conduit reservoir," Lysandra sent. "It's guarded by a specialized Ymir unit. Their only weakness is a massive, contained energy burst, a fusion of red and violet forces. A combination of your attack and mine," Zhara summarized, a flicker of professional interest in her violet eyes. The vessel is too weak. Xylos is wounded. You and I must lead the assault. Zhara walked over to the crippled Xylos and, with a swift, merciless motion, administered a burst of her own violet energy to jumpstart his regeneration. You will accompany the vessel, Xylos. You will ensure his survival as he is vital to the Lytheni's retreat. Fail again and I will dissolve you to dust. Xylos, barely conscious, nodded stiffly. His hatred for me was palpable, but his fear of Zhara was greater. Lysandra turned to me, her red eyes conveying the gravity of my new role. Your job, Elias, is to maintain a constant red energy signal to keep the Ymir anchor destabilized. You are the battery and the target. As we prepared to move, Lysandra and Zhara taking the lead, Xylos and I tailing them, a sound echoed from the depths of the dam, a brittle, high-pitched crackling. The air temperature in the tunnel plummeted instantly. A thin layer of white frost coated the metal walls, and a profound, bone-deep coldness began to leach the vitality from the air. The Ymir are activating their presence, Lysandra warned through the channel. Move. Now. We plunged into the deepest tunnels, the strange, unifying terror of the Ymir driving the vampire queen, the alien agent, and the immortal human forward into the cold, dead light. The deeper we plunged into the canyon dam's tunnels, the more profound the Ymir influence became. The pervasive, bone-deep coldness was intense, causing layers of unnatural white frost to coat the pipes and walls. The air was thick with a dead, metallic scent. My Kaelen-infused body registered the Ymir's entropic field as a constant, low-grade drain on my vitality, but the Xylos felt it too. Zhara and Lysandra led the way, their contrasting energy signatures, violet and blue/red, working in a terrifying, synchronized dance. Zhara used her violet energy to physically shatter the frozen obstacles, while Lysandra used her blue energy to stabilize the immediate path, ensuring no structural collapse would bury us. Behind them, I stumbled forward, my flank throbbing where Xylos had struck me. And right next to me, the Xylos lieutenant, though grievously wounded, maintained a furious, grudging pace. Vessel, keep your red energy signature stable. The Ymir are drawn to instability. You are the battery they want to drain. Lysandra commanded through the mental channel. If the Lytheni allows her puppet to fail, I will feast on you both, Kaelen. Xylos hissed back telepathically, his rage barely contained. You smell like a corpse, Xylos, I muttered, my own voice tight with exhaustion and the effort to keep my energy signature steady. Silence, Thorne, Xylos growled, his violet eyes flashing. We are only alive because the Queen fears the Ymir more than your insipid existence. We reached the main conduit reservoir, a vast, cylindrical cavern where the dam's central machinery hummed. In the center, suspended above a pit of churning, frigid water, was the Ymir anchor. It wasn't a machine, it was a grotesque, crystalline entity pulsating with dead white light. It looked like a massive, jagged diamond, constantly absorbing the surrounding heat and life. And guarding it were two huge, humanoid figures armored in thick, translucent white ice. The Ymir sentinels, Zhara hissed through the mental channel. Pure entropy. Their touch dissolves energy and life. The Ymir sentinels turned. They didn't move quickly, they moved with an unnerving, slow certainty. As they walked, the metal floor beneath their feet turned instantly to brittle, frozen dust. Lysandra, Zhara. The fusion strike must be immediate. I shouted through the mental link. They're destabilizing the area too fast. They're destabilizing the area too fast. The sentinels must be momentarily overloaded to create a vulnerability in the anchor's shield, Lysandra replied. Elias, Xylos. You will fire at the anchor to draw its attention. Then the sentinels are ours. Zhara and Lysandra took flanking positions, their figures radiating preparation. Xylos, despite his injuries, managed to focus. His hand morphed into a weapon, channeling concentrated violet energy. I raised my Kaelen emitter, gathering every particle of red energy left in my system. Now vessel. Xylos commanded, his voice a battle cry. We fired simultaneously. Xylos's violet beam and my red beam slammed into the Ymir anchor. The white crystal flashed in painful protest, diverting its entropic energy toward us. The sheer, cold drain on my life force was agonizing, forcing the Kaelen blood into emergency overdrive just to keep me conscious. But the distraction worked. The sentinels turned their chilling attention to Xylos and me. This was the opening. Lysandra and Zhara acted in perfect, lethal synchronization. Lysandra unleashed a torrent of pure red energy from her specialized wrist device, and Zhara fired a wave of devastating, focused violet energy from her hands. The two energy streams did not clash, they fused in the air, a blinding torrent of deep magenta power, the concentrated force of two cosmic rivals uniting. The magenta blast slammed into the two Ymir sentinels. The entropic white armor of the sentinels exploded in a flash of heat and steam, and the entities themselves dissolved into harmless, swirling white dust. The anchor is exposed. Elias. Full blast on the crystal. Lysandra screamed through the link. I ignored the crippling pain of the Ymir drain and emptied the rest of my red energy into the Kaelen emitter. A sustained beam of crimson fire roared from my wrist and struck the Ymir anchor. The crystal shrieked, a sound of cosmic defeat, and then shattered. The entropic field instantly reversed. The profound cold vanished, replaced by a sudden, intense surge of displaced heat. The dam's cavern rumbled violently. We had won. The Ymir threat was neutralized. The localized entropic field was gone. But the moment the common enemy was defeated, the fragile truce shattered. Xylos, now standing despite his painful regeneration, looked at me with renewed hatred. He was no longer bound by Zhara's decree. The Ymir are gone, Lytheni puppet. Your usefulness ends here. Xylos lunged at me, his talons aimed for my throat. Before I could react, Zhara moved. Not to defend me but to eliminate the liability. With a horrifying snap of her wrist, a thin, needle-like blade of violet energy shot out and severed Xylos's wrist, leaving his attack incomplete and his hand on the floor. Enough, Xylos, Zhara commanded, her voice dangerously calm. Your insubordination is intolerable. You are a threat to my rule. Xylos didn't fight. He looked at his queen with bewildered betrayal before collapsing, truly defeated this time. Zhara looked at Lysandra. The threat is neutralized, Lytheni. The truce is terminated. Your vessel has damaged my general and destroyed our primary resource. The Xylos owe you nothing. The Kaelen owe you nothing either, Zhara, Lysandra countered, stepping forward, her red eyes blazing. You endangered this entire system with your reckless pursuit of power. The council will be notified of your actions. Your council's fear is their only weapon, Zhara sneered. We will meet again, Lysandra. And when we do, I will claim your little vessel's life force as payment for the damages. Zhara then did something unexpected. She channeled a vast amount of violet energy not to attack, but to open a dimensional rift behind her. With a final, chilling glare at me, she stepped through the rift, pulling the broken body of Xylos after her. They were gone. I looked at Lysandra. The silence was absolute. We were alone in the wreckage of the dam, the air still smelling of fused energy and triumph. It's over, I said, the words feeling heavy with exhaustion. Lysandra walked to me, her expression unreadable. She reached out, placing a cold hand on my neck where the bond was strongest. No, Elias, she whispered, her voice low. It is not over. You have survived the Ymir. You have survived the Xylos. But now you must face the true enemy, the Council. Back in the sanctuary, the atmosphere was colder than the Ymir's entropic field. Lysandra and I stood before the Nexus, which was now radiating a blinding, fierce blue light. The Council of Seven towering holographic figures of ancient Kaelen, were assembled, their voices a single crushing wave of judgment. Lysandra, you risked catastrophic dimensional collapse. You exposed the Lytheni to the Xylos Queen. And you maintained the bond with the vessel, ELIAS THORNE, in direct defiance of the Council's decree. The lead voice, Kaelen Council Prime, thundered. Lysandra stood unflinching, her blue-tinged skin radiating an inner calm that belied the danger. I secured the sector against the Ymir Prime. The Xylos were forced into cooperation, a strategic advantage that buys us decades. The vessel was indispensable. Indispensable and non-compliant. His human unpredictability is a systemic risk. The Council orders immediate and irreversible termination of the vessel bond. The Prime declared. The blue light on the Nexus intensified, preparing the energy required to tear the Kaelen blood from my system and revert me to a dying mortal. I felt a sudden, sharp, sickening drain. The process had begun. I swayed, feeling the life force receding, the immortal strength dissolving. The agony was not physical, but existential. Lysandra moved with a speed I'd never seen, pushing past the Council's command. She didn't argue. She turned to me, her red eyes filled with a desperate, singular focus. Elias, she whispered, her voice tight with urgency. Do you believe in this war? Do you accept the bond, knowing the cost, knowing you are a slave to the mission? The pain was overwhelming, but the clarity of my purpose, forged in the heat of battle, was stronger. I looked at the photograph of her first vessel, Kaelen, which I knew was still hidden nearby. I was not just a vessel, I was her second chance. I choose the long night, Lysandra. I forced the words out, my voice raspy. I choose the mission. Lysandra smiled, a brief, fierce, heartbreaking expression that was entirely for me. She reached out and placed both hands on the Nexus control panel. Lysandra ignored the Council's telepathic screams of protest. She channeled every ounce of her personal energy, red and blue, into the Nexus. The bond will not be severed, she yelled, her voice physical and booming, overriding the Council's holographic commands. I will solidify the bond permanently. The Nexus screamed, not with energy but with the sound of alien technology being pushed past its design limit. Lysandra was performing a forbidden, ancient rite, the fusion rite. She drew a needle of pure blue energy from the Nexus and pierced her own palm. A single, heavy drop of her concentrated, blue-purple Kaelen blood welled up. She reached out to me, the energy field around us crackling wildly. Take it, Elias. This is the final infusion. It will rewrite the bond beyond the Council's reach, making you permanent, but it will drain my ability to anchor to this dimension for a cycle. I stumbled forward, driven by instinct, and consumed the drop of concentrated blood. The sensation was not just healing, it was a full, violent fusion. The Kaelen blood in my veins no longer felt like a foreign substance. It felt like me. My bones solidified, my nervous system ignited, and the blue/red balance became my own conscious control. I was permanently bound, permanently immortal, and permanently immune to the Council's termination code. The backlash was immediate. As I stood, stronger than ever, Lysandra collapsed, her blue-tinged skin turning ash-gray. The effort had drained her entirely. You have doomed yourself, Lysandra. You are now exiled from the Kaelen. You are stripped of the Nexus in your sector. You are alone. The Prime declared, the holographic figures dissolving in final fury. The Nexus went dark. The sanctuary fell silent. Lysandra had sacrificed her entire standing, her connection to her species, to save me in the mission. I caught Lysandra before she hit the floor. She was cold, weak, and seemingly mortal for the first time since I met her. The permanent fusion had worked, but it had left her vulnerable and exiled. Lysandra, are you all right? I asked, my voice panicked. She opened her red eyes, now dulled by exhaustion. I am anchored to you now, Elias. Fully. I lost the Nexus. I lost the Council. I gave you the one thing they could never forgive. Autonomy. Autonomy? Yes, she whispered, a faint smile touching her lips. They can no longer control your life force. Your actions are your own. The Kaelen mission is now our mission. We are exiles. We have only each other. I looked at the massive dark space of the sanctuary. It was no longer a safe base, it was just a hidden chamber. We were fugitives, hunted by the Xylos and now branded enemies by the Kaelen Council. I gently lifted her into my arms. Her weight was negligible, her body frail. Where do we go? We leave the sanctuary, Lysandra instructed, her voice regaining a thread of its old command. The Council will send agents. We must disappear into the anonymity of the human world. We are no longer agent and vessel. We are two exiles, an immortal and a vulnerable anchor. I carried her toward the hidden transit portal. As I reached the exit, I paused. I reached into the hidden compartment where the photograph was kept, pulled out the silver-framed image of the first vessel, Kaelen, and tucked it safely into my suit. We will not fail this time, Lysandra, I vowed. The portal opened and we stepped out of the sanctuary for the final time. We were on a quiet, rain-slicked rooftop overlooking the sprawling, indifferent city. The city lights, the same lights I had once seen as a mocking symbol of my failure, now seemed like the chaotic, vast, perfect camouflage for our new existence. I gently set Lysandra down in the cover of a massive rooftop ventilation unit. Her blue-tinged skin was still pale, but her red eyes were sharp and alert. The war continues, Elias, she said, her voice resolute. But the rules have changed. The Council will hunt us because we are insubordinate. Zhara will hunt us because we humiliated her. And the Ymir, they are still out there. I looked down at the city, the cold wind whipping the rain into my face. I was ELIAS THORNE, the man who was about to die, now standing on the precipice of an endless war, an immortal fugitive bound to an exiled alien queen. I drew on the power within me, the perfect, controlled balance of blue and red energy. I felt the invulnerability, the speed, the strength. I was no longer a vessel, I was a warrior. We need resources. We need to establish a new base, undetected, I stated, the former despair completely eradicated, replaced by the fierce, focused resolve of the truly immortal. Lysandra reached up and touched the healed wound on my neck, her touch now filled with an undeniable complex intimacy of shared destiny. "We start small, Elias," she said, a hint of her ancient humor returning. "You were a successful entrepreneur, albeit a failed one. Use your human skills. We need money, influence, and weapons that don't glow with Kaelen energy." She looked at me, her expression conveying the weight of their new, intertwined future. "I was about to let you die, Elias Thorne. Then an alien vampire gave me her blood and made me immortal. And now the true cost of that gift is upon us. Welcome to the long, uncertain night, my partner." I smiled, a dark, confident expression that the old Elias could never have mustered. I checked the Kaelen emitter on my wrist. It no longer felt like a weapon of my master but a tool of my own survival. "I'm ready, Lysandra," I replied. "The long night begins. And this time we write our own rules." The end.